Many of our facilities that were used as schools are now being used as shelters for families who have fled the war and sought for refuge in those schools. Mental scar on the children of Gaza is immense. As soon as there's a ceasefire, which is long overdue, and we do hope that this happens as soon as possible, so that rebuilding starts, so that material for education for children is allowed into Gaza, so that children have some sort of way of normalcy.
Addressing Catholic cardinals, Pope Francis referred to airstrikes that reportedly killed 25 Palestinians on Friday, calling the bombing of children an act of cruelty, not war. Now, this is not the first time that children of Gaza has made it to international headlines or is now in international discourse, irrespective of the sharp rhetoric on both sides. The reality of the situation is children in Gaza are facing an insurmountable crisis. The immediate casualty of the conflict is education. I am now joined by Juliette Touma, Director of Communication, UNRWA. Juliette has just joined us, in fact, from Jordan, from Amman. Juliette Touma, good evening. Thank you so much for joining us on Viewpoint.
Thanks for having me.
So I'll just have our viewers know that the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine Refugees, that this is what the UNRWA stands for. It works for the Palestinian refugees in this particular conflict region. It's a UN agency that supports the relief and human development of Palestinian refugees. It also supports the 6 million Palestinian refugees within and outside Palestine, providing services such as schools, primary health centers, and other social services. So, Juliette, Gaza's children are fighting for survival. They're facing this terrible onslaught of aggression and violence on their territory. Under such circumstances, how are you and your organization reaching out to Gaza's children, and what is your assessment of their plight at the moment?
Well, children have been a casualty of this brutal war for nearly 15 months now. They've witnessed what no child around the world should witness. They've been displaced. Loved ones have been killed, sometimes in front of their own eyes. Many children were killed. Many were injured. And all of the children of Gaza who are supposed to be in school have not been in school for the second year in a row. So we are on the verge of losing a whole generation of children in Gaza.
Right. You know, with the structures being raised to the ground, we here in India, of course, have information streaming in only with certain sources. And I do believe that sometimes we don't have the full picture. And my curiosity is around, are children completely stripped of all opportunities of learning in this entire region?
So they have not been to school formally for the second year in a row. You see, UNRWA, before the war started, used to provide more than 330,000 boys and girls with education in UN schools. And when the war started, all schools in Gaza, government, UN school, private schools, were all forced shut. Many of our facilities that were used as schools are now being used as shelters for families who have fled the war and sought for refuge in those schools. Now, we have been giving at UNRWA some form of psychosocial activity that involve learning for children, very basic, so that children can catch up, so that children can learn, but it's nothing in comparison to a child being in a school. The natural habitat of a child, if you wish, is inside a school, where children not only learn, but also play and make friends and reconnect and learn also the life skills that are absolutely critical for their futures.
Absolutely. And, you know, just to get an understanding of the magnitude of the issue, an entire generation of children falling out of the education radar losing crucial years of their, say, the school going or college going or university going years. Perhaps it's going to take a long time to make up for this, but is there any way that UNRWA is hoping to get these children back into the radar, back into the education system? Is there a
They've
plan in
never
place?
left. Yeah, they've never left our radar. I mean, the children of Gaza, and there's about 1 million of them, have been pretty much a very big focus for UNRWA. We are not able to provide schooling in proper schools, but we have been doing some psychosocial support, some simple learning activities. But it's very, very difficult to bring in education supplies into Gaza. As you know, Gaza is under siege. And because of the internet connectivity, which is very, very patchy and in some cases completely non-existent, for children, it is very difficult to do virtual learning, as an example. Also, Gaza is a very, very poor place. Even before the war, the levels of poverty were very high. So digital poverty is also widespread. People don't have the machines, and obviously they don't have the internet connectivity. This is absolutely why we have been calling for a ceasefire for the sake of children, for the sake of their education, for them to be able to return to learning before they become a lost generation.
Right. Our children, I want to ask you this question because, again, like I said, we have access to certain amount of information. We do not have the full picture, but are children being used as human shields, as the Israeli side often suggests, that they are as much a part of the war and, in fact, being used by terror groups? What is your understanding of how children are placed in this
Look,
conflict?
we also get these reports that people in general have been used as human shields. If this is the case, then it should be investigated. The use of anyone as a human shield, any civilian as a human shield, is contradictory to international humanitarian law. Across the Gaza Strip, nowhere is safe, and no one is safe, and no one has been spared, and nothing has been spared, whether it's schools, hospitals, children, older people, men, women. It has been an absolute and utter brutal, brutal war, including on children.
And what are the threats that children face? Because if children are not, I imagine a normal childhood, where a child has a certain routine or does his school hours. What are the threats for children who don't do that? Are they vulnerable to child trafficking or manual labor? What has been the, sort of safety network, the safeguards that UNRWA works on so that, children don't fall into the wrong hands, as it were?
So that's exactly the fear, is that we know that from other conflicts, and including from Gaza, because Gaza is no stranger to conflicts, right? Even before this current ongoing war has been going through multiple cycles of violence and of blockade. And we know that from other conflicts around the world. The longer that children stay out of school, the risk that they fall prey into exploitation is much higher. That includes child labor, it includes recruitment into armed groups, it includes early marriage. This is why it's absolutely critical that there's a ceasefire and that children are able to get their education and to catch up on the loss over the past 2 years.
Right. In your understanding, are children susceptible to being radicalized, to falling prey to terror groups as well? Since you
I mean,
mentioned,
we know that from other conflicts, that the longer that children stay out of school, the risk for them to be exploited is very high.
true, true. So, how and when can the rebuilding start? How can children of Gaza hope to lead a normal life from where they are right now?
As soon as there's a ceasefire, which is long overdue, and we do hope that this happens as soon as possible, so that rebuilding starts, so that material for education for children is allowed into Gaza, so that children have some sort of way of normalcy. and so that children are safe. You see, right now, children are not safe, and Gaza is no place for children because of this brutal war.
Right. I understand, the sort of challenges that even UNRWA would have to work within, as you explained, the constraints to provide learning to children in that zone, in that entire area. But my concern is also around what is the mental cost, the emotional cost to children. Is UNRWA also addressing that, the emotional scars that obviously in a situation like this children would face?
No, you're absolutely right. The mental scar on the children of Gaza is immense, immense. Um, every child in Gaza, every adult in Gaza, every person who has been going through this war is scarred, is traumatized. Is because of the brutality of this war, is because of the shock, because of the displacement that people had been undergoing multiple times, losing everything, needing everything, relying on the very, very little aid that comes into Gaza, losing jobs, losing, more importantly, loved ones, losing schooling, losing their future. And so everyone is scarred emotionally. And UNRWA has been, since the beginning of the war, providing psychosocial support to people who are impacted by the war through a teams of psychologists, social workers who help people overcome, who help people download the experiences that they've been going through. With children, it is mostly focused on play, on doing things that are going to help them reconnect a little bit with their childhood. But it's by far not enough. The war has got to stop. It has been a very, very, very long war, and with brutal consequences, devastating consequences, in fact, on the people of Gaza, among them many children.
Right, to be a witness to such death and destruction at an early age, at an impressionable age, one can just imagine the damage that it can do. We all know that childhood happens to be the foundation for any individual. And I appreciate Juliette Touma and organizations like yours that are reaching out to the children in Gaza. I wish you all the best. Thank you so much for joining us on Free Press Journal.
Thanks for having me.
Pleasure.